So now let's welcome Eugeniu Volari of Via Typing.
Good morning.
Oh, wait.
I've been a fan of technology since I don't know when, and today's technology is really amazing in my opinion, and I'm flattened by it, and my feeling about it is represented by the dog.
In the middle?
The serious one. But I'd like to thank for the sponsors of today's technology we started in the morning with, for the coffee and the Comment Central. This technology keeps us alive and alert every morning. And today I'd like also to mention a different technology which we may not recognize as much, but we use it on a daily basis. And some people use it for 5 minutes a day, some people use it for hours, and it meets us and greets us on our desks in front of the computer. And this is, I think, three respectable gentlemen who are drinking a coffee and discussing the progress of technology. Another famous public speaker came to them and asked them, if you were to mention what is the most valuable asset we have, they all turned around and they said, focus. These three gentlemen were Bill Gates Sr., and Warren Buffett. So focus apparently is something that we recognize is important, but we don't know how to control it. When we type, there are two most recognized ways of typing. One is hunting typing, which is a number of ways of typing. We can use many fingers, we can look at the keyboard, or we may not. And another better way of typing is known as touch typing. You would be surprised by it, but touch typing is not a new thing. It didn't come to us with the touch screen devices. It was first pronounced as touch typing in 1880 when Frank McCurry won the competition on typing. At that time, the typewriters were quite different from our today's keyboards. They were actually activated by a pedal under the table, under the desk, so you would be able to sit and rest your feet well. But my question was if it's possible to use today's technology to make typing more efficient. And coming back to the previous slide, if we could get control of the focus, time, and our efforts we invest in typing, which eventually contribute to noticeable financial resources. So I sat down as a person who had some experience in research and development, and at first I was thinking about using advanced technology like artificial intelligence or anything else, which of course I didn't control or have had ability or expertise in, but I used my expertise in design. So I designed a stencil which could be placed on top of a keyboard and which would simply guide fingers towards the right keys. After that, I printed it with a 3D printer and glued it to the keyboard. It turned out to be a pretty efficient device. It helped me mastering touch typing, but in the course of my research, I've also found out that typing is not a very simple activity. There is so-called typing biometrics, which is a lot of knowledge about our typing activity. Turns out that typing is not just pressing buttons, but it's rather a neurological activity, which is very specific for every person. And actually, it's possible to recognize people with high accuracy. And I found out that we don't know much about typing, and I'm convinced that today we can use typing not only for delivering our ideas through the computers to the world, but also for understanding more about our health, and that we can use typing to detect neurological patterns, which also may be important for diagnosing neurological patients. There is another problem that people, every year, there are about 1 million stroke patients in the US, and with advanced knowledge in typing biometrics, we could monitor the rehabilitation of those patients. And interestingly, that typing biometrics can be used for many other health diagnose, to monitor, and to find treatments. That was my idea, to bring attention to typing, and also I'm proposing a better way for mastering typing and typing in particular. Any questions? Yeah.
I can speak loudly. If you were to just narrow down on the problem you're trying to solve today, what would it be? Like, what is the problem that you're trying to
With this device that I've shown, it helps mastering typing without efforts, without spending time on rote repetitions. And normally, if we used traditional typing methods, we would spend hundreds of hours for just practicing typing. The old approach relies on the principle practice makes it perfect. But I refused to spend hours of practice on mastering a skill which we use on a daily basis. And I didn't have patience for that. Therefore, I decided to do something that would help me gaining the tactile, the muscle memory for typing, and it turned out there is such way, and it's different than the touch typing proposed 150 years ago, which we still use to this day with minor changes.
hours? What would it be with this?
It's at least twice faster, but also the typing biometrics data, which can detect pressings of the buttons down to milliseconds. And then running some analytics, I found out that the time for gaining mastery is about 6 times faster for the fastest keyboard. So it's down to 30 milliseconds. But that's more than
It's very interesting. There's a lot of different keyboard types. So I mean, to manufacture, you have to get like kind of the most popular keyboards, market towards them. I can see that as being something people might buy, especially kind of anchoring your fingers so you don't cheat and go over the home keys and you just put your fingers in the keys. It's a smart idea. One thing you said that kind of triggered a thought was, could you predict if people were going to have a stroke from this biometric data?
There's, because it's more of a medical expertise that would be required for making medical assumptions. I don't feel like that I would be able to do that. However, with Alzheimer's, there was research which would show the early signs of Alzheimer's even 20 years before that. So it's possible to solve this.
Yeah, I mean, that would, if there was that predictability, that'd be a great plugin to be able to sell, so people to be able to monitor.
For stroke, it's rather monitoring rehabilitation and finding the best medicine, rather than foresee the symptoms.
I'm sending you, I enjoyed the presentation, eye-opening. I've had a stroke. And everything's back to normal, except I do have some individual touching ability here. I'd love to sit down with you just to see what happens there, because that's the only problem I have. So is that possible we can get together to do that?
Yes, of course. Even before I started learning mastering typing, I realized that one problem for me was not knowing the layout of the keyboard, but rather lack of agility, finger agility. And it turns out that many people who haven't mastered touch typing, their fingers lack agility, especially fingers or lateral fingers. And the agility is something that this device also helps development, because it restricts fighting of the keyboard and promotes using fingers which are not really
You may want to talk to Dr. Pete McCollum here. And he is very knowledgeable in this. In fact, that was his graduate studies. You want to talk to him here? I'll introduce you. Thank you.
Okay. I'm just piggyback on what a couple people said, clarifying exactly what problem this solves and sit down for and just watching you. I think it would just a little bit of feedback. It would help if you had the keyboard and show like had a demonstration. In a video showing, how you use the keyboard and how this, helps people. So just like something visual or maybe something tactical, I think it would help clarify exactly what you do in your office.
Oh, well, thank you very much for your presentation. And so you're trying to sell the overlay or the template, correct?
I have prepared prototypes. And actually, I'm selling it on the website, but I figured out that selling them one piece at a time is not practical, or wouldn't make much sense because people don't know what I'm offering. So I assume that when people come to the website and when they see this strange keyboard, it's very hard to explain what it is exactly for.
Are you thinking of creating a course or a class or something that you could do to educate people to learn touch typing with your template?
I thought of that, but it would be time consuming.
Listen, you definitely have to implement this in your presentation. There has to be something where people can visualize this. I know what they're trying to do, but it's really not always so easy to figure this out because you should have a couple keyboards here on the table, showing this on the screen, takes you 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Would really make this sensible and understanding to the ones that sit here, because otherwise it would be very, very difficult just to get your thoughts.
Well, I'm a spring chicken. I'm 77 years old now, and I basically am a hunt and pecker. Do I need to take a just beginning typing class before I can use this thing, or is that not required? What do you suggest?
That's that's possible. It's a very seamless transition from beginners to more advanced, and that is the idea of this stencil, that you don't need to think about it or force yourself to press certain buttons, because the ridges, the physical ridges actually help not thinking, but rely more on the tactile senses. And therefore, I don't see a difference between beginners typists who I was, and actually at the beginning, that was my thought from years ago. I was thinking I would never ever learn touch typing, and I would need to suffer while younger generations are born with technology, and I was not. So I'm missing out on something completely. But it turned out that it's possible to master it, and people who once mastered touch typing, they rarely remember how difficult it is to live without this skill. But people who not touch type oftentimes do not see how they would even master it. Although once it goes into the muscle memory, it becomes just simple, and it actually very joyful. Rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering, how is the biometric data captured as of right now? Is that like a third-party group, and is there a way that you have people's biometric data like stored such that they can see their progress over time or gain insights over time?
I'm working on developing this method for doing this analysis using statistical analysis. People have done that using AI, but the difference is that there is probably no single person who understands AI and can dig into the AI's raw data. Therefore, they lack on full understanding. Whereas I'm trying to find patterns which are specific to certain conditions. Therefore, I think I like a manual approach that gives better understanding to me, and simple variables like movement square or variability can provide substantial knowledge about each figure's ability. Can be expanded to data sets for different house conditions.
How do you do this?
I like your idea of it saves time. So there's that old adage of it takes 1,000 hours to do practice perfect, but what we all know is that it takes perfect practice to make practice perfect. And so it's the quality and not the quantity of time that you spend. And so I think that for you having good testimonials and stories, and also identifying, if you're just creating this to increase the abilities of everyone to pick it up faster, then do some research on, because I remember when I was in the 9th grade, I took a keyboarding and document processing class, and the whole time was playing this game with a Mario type fake character on having to hit the right keys in order to make him move forward. So there's all these kinds of typing softwares out there. It would be interesting for you to experiment with all the different typing softwares, but with different generations of people who were hunt and peckers, so like down to 10-year-olds up to the the 70s, 80s group, to then understand the speed in which you can increase.
The learning curve, understanding the learning curve is probably the most interesting for me idea, but that would require building additional system which would be capable of tracking eyesight and finger movements.
I think be simple. Just watch people do it and then them go, wow, this is better, and you capture that.
I like the wow factor.
Yeah, yeah. If you can tell a story, then start telling the story first, and then you can build in the mechanisms to advance in your technological, counting. But for now, just ask people. Yeah.
So there's been some talk about how you're portraying the product and the service, right? So you said that you have a few prototypes that you're selling online, but you're having a hard time getting the point across. So consumers generally, they buy into the experience and then also the advantage, right? And so the end goal. So by kind of capturing a video of what that experience looks like and what the advantages they'll have after they purchase would be a huge selling point. So by driving in, a video, just having it edited, very aesthetic, very, very important. They'll understand what the value is, your value proposition, how it hits their pain points, and then they'll eventually move forward into a purchase. But I would also recommend if you have the product and you could also provide some sort of instruction or a course, they would feel more confident in reaching that value proposition and move forward into the purchase.
All right, we have time for 2 more questions. We're ready.
Hi. That's okay. I'm here.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah. My question is, did you have a chance to look at the medical research? I mean, keyboard is a very data-rich hardware, and if you had a chance to look at the research, maybe there are some connections, the data generated from the typing, which could be connected to different neurological diseases, like stroke and different types of, not necessarily only from perspective of diseases, but different correlations, behavioral research, it could be also. And if there are already implementations like that.
There are. The first research was in terms of typing memories was done by Microsoft in 1984. At that time, they attempted to see what is the data behind typing. And they did find out that each person's typing pattern is different. And that means that our neurological network system is unique for every person. And of course, it's possible to find out more traits about how we
I see some perspective here, and if you're open for collaboration, I think we can develop sort of dashboard for you, which is connected with your keyboard, where you could apply some machine learning or data science algorithms for, for prediction purposes in medical field.
would be happy to do something. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. I'm not sure what is the business model. Do you have a patent for the product or anything?
I come from engineering career, therefore I thought that first thing that I need to do is the patent. So I did go with the patent. That was my part of understanding how inventions work.
And have you considered, I don't know, selling the patent or a partnership with a company that is already manufacturing keyboards, so you can?
It wasn't my first priority for some patent. Then, after realizing that there is so much data that people couldn't even think about without computers in the previous ages since 1888, I figured that there is more potential that I would need to work on, and therefore patent is starting point and something that secures my expertise in the field. Therefore, I think hold on just selling the patent and then closing research.
So the final question of the day is, what can we as a community do for you?
As I mentioned, the research, the development of this pencil does not seem to be very commercially viable idea. Therefore, I figured it would be best to reach out to agencies or communities that understand the importance of small numbers, which would be the Department of Education. Because it all comes to statistics. For example, one blink of an eye, when we focus on the keyboard and type on the monitor, or actually to move span, waste 2 seconds. If we multiply 2 seconds by 10, if we do that 10 times per minute, that ends up to be a third of our time working on the computer. We work on the computer for 3 hours a day. For a professional, that would end up being a spare hour, depending on the salary, that would result in $60 a day, multiplied by 200 days per year, and that would be $12,000 a year. So it turns out that smaller number can actually affect significant portion, which is hard to understand on the daily basis. But if that would be an agency or educational system that understands the importance of these small numbers, then back to the question, I would need, or I would really appreciate ideas about how to share my ideas or my insights with who are the people who would be interested in hearing this transaction?
Thank you. Eugeniu Volari.